Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Oh my goodness. That said 4-0 Buffalo at one point. Megan, oh my goodness. What a game. You and I at the second intermission said, well, hey, you're not out of it. You're still in this game. You got a chance if you can come out and get one early. The Avs got 3 early in that game, tied it up before the 10-minute mark, and had almost 12 minutes to work with to get this one done. Not only do they get this win after trailing 4-0, it doesn't really matter because you were playing an Eastern Conference opponent. They don't even give up a point to the Buffalo Sabres. Scott Wedgwood is perfect in this game. Megan, a lot to unpack here in this one. Guerilla Sports Off Ice post-game show powered by our great friends over at Trusted American. Go to trustedamerican.com. See if they can help you get a lower monthly interest rate and lower your monthly mortgage. Not have to make any payments till February. Trustedamerican.com. Megan, let me just get your kind of, if you can put any words together at this point, sweeping overall thoughts on what we just saw the Avs overcome a 4-0 deficit to win 5-4 in regulation.
You take a breath. I'm overstimulated by the wave of excitement. This emotion is unfamiliar to me this season. Just the elation of how exciting this comeback is not something I have felt this year from the Avs. It feels like this is what I expect from Avalanche hockey. We talked about Wedgwood's comments in how this is how the league feels about Colorado, that you can never count them out because they always have this knack for climbing back into games, and they've had to push to get back into games that they had every business winning. After this first period, they didn't really have business winning this game. They just needed to play with a little pride. For them to come out with the win on top of it all is a sweet bonus and a testament to the hard work, because they had to work extremely hard. Buffalo did not completely back out of this game. Now, if I'm Buffalo, this is a total collapse, and I'm extremely frustrated with the result. But the high danger chances still finish in all situations 18-10 in favor of the Sabres. Obviously, a lot of that fueled by a great first period from them where the Avs just didn't play very well. But Buffalo never completely backed out of this game.
No.
They pushed extremely hard once Colorado got the goal lead later in the third period. But it's pure hard work and compete from the Avs. Players like Nathan MacKinnon finally break free from the chains of their goal-scoring drought. A 9-shot game from Nathan MacKinnon. I think it was Rycroft who used the word video game speed to describe what Nathan MacKinnon did in this game. And I think it's really important to key in on some of the important players who played a huge role in this Avs comeback. Nathan MacKinnon at the top of that list, but I'd be remiss not to mention Scott Wedgwood. Not allowing any goals to give them at least a chance.
You're 100% right. And we are going to talk plenty about Scott Wedgwood in this post-game show. But I want to talk a little bit about Nathan MacKinnon and just the change that the Avs made. And again, I don't necessarily know if they did anything different structurally, but the effort, the compete, the determination, the desperation that they came out with starting the second period. This was the version of the Avalanche team, Megan, that we talk about all the time. That, to your point about video game mode, Nathan MacKinnon, I made the comment right before they said that. I said, because they were mentioning on the broadcast, every time Nathan MacKinnon touched the puck after the game was tied, they said, oh, Buffalo's sending 3 guys to him now. And Megan, I looked at you and said, I don't think it matters. When Nathan MacKinnon is playing like this, you could put 5 guys on him. It just does not really matter. The Avs just took over and imposed their will, and there was nothing the Sabres could do to stop it. And like you said, we're going to talk plenty about him, but you can't tell the story of this game without Scott Wedgwood coming in and settling everything down. Not being the first star of the game, not playing spectacular, not making 10 show-stopping saves, but just being solid, covering pucks, slowing the game down a little bit, and allowing the Avs to get back in this one. But again, you look at even the game flow of how this game went from start to finish. I'm with you. It did not feel like a real score effects heavy game. To me, this was just the Avs taking over and the Sabres not in any way being able to stop it.
Not having an answer for it. When you look top 6 to top 6, the Avs are so top heavy, even with such a depleted lineup, that you expect them to be able to contend with any goal scoring that Buffalo could provide. So if Buffalo shows up and says, we'll have a 4-goal period, the Avs, with everything that they're built on top with a Rantanen, a McKinnon, and Arturi Lehkonen, who plays great tonight,
yes,
should be able to say, okay, we can also respond with 4 goals. And it takes a village. I think Kiviranta has that great chance in the second period that I kind of poked fun of, but that line came alive with the help of Logan O'Connor and hard work from Kiviranta to also be key contributors, because 4 goals often don't get scored alone. And it was hard work, obviously, from the top line, who had a rough first period, but turned things around, but also some of the depth scoring stepping up in that place as well.
I also want to talk about something that we're actually seeing right now on the screen, that not only was it the Avs turning things on offensively and the players that you just named, this really was a full team effort. I thought after that first period, all 4 lines were going, all 3 defensive pairings were going in positive directions. And 2 plays in particular, one from Mikko Rantanen, one from Devon Toews, coming back on breakaways to help. Scott Wedgwood still had to make saves, but they were saves made much easier by just effort, putting your head down, digging in, and back checking and getting back and helping your goalie out, making a play. The Avs, like I said, they dialed things up, not just on the offensive side, not just when the puck was on their stick and they could buzz in the around Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. When plays were going the other way, they were getting back and not giving the Sabres much. To your point, Buffalo, especially in that last minute, they get plenty of good chances. Scott Wedgwood has to come up big twice in and around the net on backdoor plays. But more or less, the Avs did a great job at both ends of the ice, Megan.
Wedgwood finishes with expected goals against 2.7, nearly 3 goals expected against him coming in as relief, and he allows 0.
None.
It's a testament to some of the chances that were allowed in the net front, a few also from distance, and he made saves a variety of ways. And this is what I liked about him, is there wasn't any particular way that seemed to expose a vulnerability of his.
Mm-hmm.
He was covering pucks. He was kick saving, pad saving, glove saving pucks, and there was just, to your point, compete.
Yes.
He was scrambling, not in the sense that he's always scrambling, but scrambling is needed. And I really appreciated that athleticism from him. But I think it also gave the team so much confidence playing in front of him, because they saw that he was also competing to see where those pucks were coming at any given point, and he was pretty successful.
Well, and not only does it give them confidence, but it's one of those situations where when you see a guy like Scott Wedgwood coming into this game and battling, even though he comes in a bad situation, the team is way down, the energy is down, the vibes are down, whatever you want to use to describe it, the morale is down. He comes into this game, and when you see him competing in a game that feels like it's potentially out of reach, well, that gets a lot of other guys who want to activate and say, yeah, we're going to put that same effort forward. He's going to battle like that for us. I'm going to dig in extra hard on this back check and make sure that I'm battling for him. And I just thought that it unlocked. I mentioned work ethic after the first period. The work ethic, the level elevated as that game went on. And I just can't help but feel that the way that Scott Wedgwood came in and played at the same time that the Avs felt like they really started to dial it up, it made such a massive difference the rest of the way. The energy level, the compete level, it was all there.
You look at that second period again and you see shades of that. We talked about angry Nate, and there wasn't a specific moment where Nate was visibly angry, but I love to see coming into that second period, even though they are down 4 goals in this game, he is still competing. And it starts to reward them, but not enough in that second period. But it's unwavering. And they go into that third period as a group, but especially led by McKinnon in that relentless pursuit of the puck.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, they start to break through a really good goaltender in Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
UPL was having a really good game, but you pointed out at the start of this show, exactly what Scott Wedgwood just told us 2 days ago. When you play against the Avalanche, with the high-end talent that they have, they just are never out of it. You can feel like you're solidly in the lead. You can feel like you have them put away, and they're just never out of it. You know who else is never out of it now? Briggsy, newest member, Guerilla Sports.
Welcome, Briggsy.
New YouTube member. Again, we have the disco lights all set up on the pod.
On the pod.
We owe. Don't tempt me with a good time. We got 2 disco lights that we owe next time we get back over to the pod. Thank you, Briggsy, for being a member. We love you guys here. Chat's filling up with little green check boxes next to people's name. I absolutely love it. Scott Wedgwood, we talked about it this afternoon on the pod. He was brought in here to put cold water on the situation and say, here's your backup. He can come in, know what he's going to give you. He's still the backup. That's why he's here. That's what his entire career says. But Megan, this was a quintessential Scott Wedgwood or equivalent Pavel Francouz. One of these, just like a backup goalie that can make a difference. That's what tonight was. You've got to feel really good for Scott Wedgwood.
I do, because I want to go back to the conversation we've been having all season about the team playing differently in front of a goaltender depending on their confidence or lack thereof in him. And it's something, if you ask a player, they're not going to readily admit. But even looking at Calvin DeHaan's game, he has a rough start to this game. He's responsible in different ways and not single-handedly for at least 2 of the goals against in that first period. But his third period was incredible. He was just as much a contributor and impact player in the creation of some of these goals now for the Avs that I want to shout out the turnaround in his own individual game. Mm-hmm. And some of that is, credit owed just to him as the individual and being able to turn around what was otherwise not a great start to the night.
Yep.
But I have to imagine that having a little bit of confidence in what the team is doing and the stability that you're getting in net also allows you a little bit of relief from some of that pressure when maybe your individual game wasn't quite where you needed it to be.
He made that play late in the game that ended up leading to the game-winning goal that I looked at you and I said, what is he doing? Because he walked about 20 feet, then made a pass that I was like, not the right pass, but it ended up being a pass that got the Avs a good look. It led to a net front scramble, which eventually led to that puck coming out, them getting a shot on net, and Arturi Lehkonen punching it in. So to your point, he found a way to collect his game and get things going the right direction. He ends up factoring in big late in the game, right when the Avs needed it. Just real quick, folks, remember, either on Twitter, we both put out calls for questions, comments. We will wrap up today's show, as we always do with our post game, by answering your questions, your comments. So head on over to Twitter, or you can just start dropping them in the chat. We'll star them as we see they come in. But we want to make sure that you guys get a chance to get in on this post game as well. Get your thoughts heard, get your questions answered.
I wanted to say 2 nice things about Calvin DeHaan before we abandon his topic, because it's not the story of this game, but it's an important piece in it. On the Kiviranta goal, they're trying to break out the puck from their own end, and he actually forces a turnover from Buffalo along the wall to allow them to exit. Kiviranta is the one who exits with the puck. O'Connor's the one who makes the entry, and he's the one who's the trailer, puts the puck on net. Kiviranta cleans up that rebound. Then in the Lehkonen goal, there's that insane pass across the slot. That passing play gets stopped, but he has another shot on net. Lehkonen cleans up that rebound. Just great play from DeHaan. Factors on 2 goals that obviously were very necessary in this game. I wanted to shout him out.
I'm glad I could tell you had more to say. I just wanted to make sure I got in the question. So I'm glad you, we have one of my favorite super chats I've seen in a while. $5 from Dean Portman. First of all, just an A1 YouTube username. Dean Portman, number 21. Scott Wedgwood is the first and last name of all my future children, regardless of age and gender. Yeah. Same. I'll throw one in there too. He was fantastic tonight. He did exactly what you needed him to. Again, I don't want to keep repeating that over and over again, but he did what you needed him to do. And you don't win this game without Scott Wedgwood being able to come in and just settle everything. Alexander Guerilla gives up that second goal, and he's smacking it back into the net. He gets pulled, and he goes to the bench, and he's throwing stuff, and he's pissed. Scott Wedgwood was calm, cool, collected. And again, I want to make sure that we reiterate. Scott Wedgwood would tell you this himself. He's been a journeyman backup. He's been around. I'm not going to say, oh, make him the starter. But like, I think he absolutely earned probably the next game on this trip. And if he's going to play like that, and if he's going to bring that type of presence to your team, then you feel really good about making that move. And it's going to buy you some time to figure out with what you want to do with Alexander Georgiev. We can have that conversation at some point in this show. I don't know if anything immediately changes overnight. But you've clearly got some decisions to make on Alexander Georgiev, and what Scott Wedgwood showed you tonight is that he can at least give you quality minutes and give you a little bit of time to be able to make that decision.
He comes in cold, and he hasn't spent much time with the team to begin learning their systems and how then categorically the Avs would like to defend in front of him. And I think the chaos of this game and all of that in consideration makes it a little extra special for what Wedgwood was able to provide. Again, I think you're right to put a little pause on what this means around the goaltending position moving forward, but people are right to want to discuss it because I think we've shared in the sentiment that bringing in Wedgwood, moving on from Montano, did not mean that they had full faith in Georgiev. I think that because they didn't have faith in Georgiev is why they made that move. And so I think that remains part of the question, problem, issue. This is not good for Alexander Georgiev as their starter.
It's the consistency issue that just continues to crop up over and over and over again. It's like when you're in a relationship with someone and you have the same fight over, and it's like, okay, this issue clearly isn't getting any better because we keep having the same argument. It's the same thing. It's every time, like you can't even really feel all that good about good Georgiev games where he stands on his head and he plays really well and he holds the other team off the score sheet, because you just sit there and you go, okay, well, that was tonight. What are we going to get tomorrow? And this game honestly felt so similar at the outset to the game in Tampa. The difference is when Alexander Georgiev went in on that game, yeah, he battled, but he couldn't stop the bleeding. Tonight, Scott Wedgwood came in and I think made all of the saves you want him to, and 2 saves that you probably weren't expecting him to. And that is all you are ever asking for out of your goaltender.
Your backup goaltender.
Your backup goaltender.
I think that's what punctuates why Georgiev's good games don't stand out as particularly great, because that's what you're supposed to do as the starter. Your backup's capable of doing it, so you have to at least, that's the bare minimum baseline. It's a little bit tough where the Avs are at with goaltending, but that isn't new, and I know everybody in the chat also knows that too. This is a safe space.
It's
Georgiev has bangs.
Yeah, I saw that one.
No, there's some people who didn't see the show earlier. And they're so confused.
Yeah, we talked about if you're getting bangs, not that bangs are bad. Some people look great in bangs. But if you didn't have bangs and suddenly you have bangs, you might be going through something a little bit here. There's so much to feel good about in this game, Megan. You pointed out the fact that I think everyone feels really good about Scott Wedgwood right now. I think that's pretty much a given. I don't know if we need to talk a whole lot more about it. But you mentioned the fact that you got depth scoring. Logan O'Connor gets on the score sheet. Yoel Kiviranta gets on the score sheet. And then that's complemented by an outstanding Nathan MacKinnon game. Cale Makar ends up bouncing back really strong after a little bit of a shaky first period. Mikko Rantanen, active, involved, engaged. Your top guys were going. You got the depth contributions. Again, like if I'm nitpicking here, beyond the first period was terrible. Nothing about the result changes the way that this game started. Outside of that, the only thing that I really feel like I can nitpick here is I wanted to see a bigger game out of Casey Middlestat. But again, you got the depth scoring. You didn't need a huge game out of Casey Middlestat.
I think it is worth noting, though, that we see some of the line changes, especially in the top 6, get a bit of a makeover as a result of just not really feeling what Casey Middlestat was doing in the night that he was having. I think that happens to players, but it is sad to see it against his former team where you would hope for a little bit more of a showing from him. And I'm, on the flip side, so happy with the way that Kovalenko seized opportunity inside the top 6 tonight. But a little sad to see Casey Middlestat not make a bigger case for himself because he has been going through a little bit of a tough period. It would have been a great opportunity for him to bounce back and be a part of this team coming back in this game.
It would have been nice for him to, like you said, to have factored in on that. But I'd be willing to bet right now he doesn't really care. Megan, the Avs will go on to Carolina here next, where they'll continue this road trip. And, we talked on the pod this afternoon saying that, hey, the Avs haven't even played one game. So we're going to stop way shy of saying that they should be, coming home 5-0. But this is a game that you need to use as a springboard to having a solid trip here. You've got some tough games coming up. This is a game that not only are there so many good things that you can look at and build on, there's also a lot of things you can look at in this game to fix and to clean up and say, we're not doing that again. Before we get to questions, as we begin to slowly wind this show down, what other thoughts do you just have on the game before, like I said, before we get into questions?
I think you kind of alluded to this in shouting out the great coverage on Taves on the breakaway against Peterka, but I do think that overall the defense stepped up in a big way to impact this game in a positive way beyond just Taves playing that so smartly as not to draw a penalty, but Gerard beats Peterka to a puck on the Logan O'Connor goal, and DeHaan, obviously, as I talked about earlier, turned his game around in a big way. Some good plays from Malinsky. I remember hearing on the broadcast in his own end to also suppress some chances and make Wedgwood's workload a little bit easier. So the defense stepped up in a way as well because they needed to turn things around from that first period.
Love it. I think that's perfect. Want to go to some questions here?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. I'll start with the first one. I'll give you a second to
pick some?
To cool. Go through here. And Megan, you're never going to believe it.
There's a lot of similarities here.
A lot of goalie questions. But here's one that I do find interesting and one that really I can't fully answer. It says, does anyone actually talk to Georgiev after that game, or do they pretend he's just not there? I don't think it's necessarily pretending he's not there. But there's a clear hero in this game tonight from a goaltending perspective, and it's not Alexander Georgiev. It's not that I'm sure guys ignore him. Here's the other part. 4 goals in the first period are a lot easier to forgive when you win the game. So like it's kind of like Charlie Lindgren and Washington last week when he shoots
his own goal.
Shoots the puck into his own net, but the Caps come back and win. So you can be like, funny, right? I don't necessarily know if it's quite the same thing here, but yeah, I'd be willing to bet a lot more of the conversation in the locker room right now is about Scott Wedgwood and not Georgiev.
I think what's interesting is Georgiev going to the bench when he's been pulled and throwing a bit of a tantrum adds to follow-up conversation. It's not just that he allowed 4 goals in the first period and was clearly frustrated on the ice. He threw a tantrum afterward. And that's where I do wonder if there is a follow-up conversation, because who are you mad at?
Yeah, you said that too when he got pulled. You said, who are you mad at?
And so I could see that rubbing teammates the wrong way because it's happening at the bench. So they're seeing it front row seat similarly. And I have this thought of, on one hand, if they talk to him, that's obviously an uncomfortable conversation, probably won't go over well, probably doesn't receive that criticism super well because of how wired he is and just kind of what we've seen from him before. But the other thing I wonder is if they don't say anything, is that actually worse? Is apathy worse? If you are in such a bad way with your goaltender that you don't even need to talk to him at the end of a bad game, is that where the disconnect is so far gone beyond repair that it's a different sort of problem? And I'm not in that room, so I can't tell you which of those two, if any, it is. But none of them sound particularly good. And it all boils down to the way that Georgiev emotionally responds to bad nights. Unfortunately, because he doesn't draw upon that in a productive way, I find it hard for the team to have really productive conversations around it then as a result.
Right. Productive, I think, is a key word there. Here's one from the chat. Question for Jesse and Megan. What's your take on this 4 Nations tournament? Do you think it really matters and will players take it seriously? Any chance Taves at 80% sits out and rest? I do think players will take it seriously. I'm excited to watch it. I don't really think it matters. I think the players care more about Olympics. I'd be surprised if Taves sat out. I don't know how many chances he's going to get to play for Team Canada.
Alongside likely
Right.
Cale Makar. I think that's what makes it difficult from the All-Star game, where I would be quicker to say that he would just sit it out if there was somehow, a reason he's being sent to it. But because of that, I could see him going and playing.
Yeah.
And I understand. It does seem like he could benefit from the rest. And the Josh Manson and Shillington injuries alongside it throws a wrench in things, because before that happened, we were looking at how deep they were on the back end and how they could just rotate guys in. And maybe that could spell for some time off for Taves at some point. Right now, with Manson and Shillington also out, I don't think that is an option. But my hope is that is something coming out of the Four Nations tournament that they can evaluate based on how healthy they're looking on the blue line.
Love it. Before I go to you for some questions from you, I do want to remind you guys about our great friends here at Trusted American Mortgage. How would you like to get through the holidays without having to make your monthly mortgage payment? Well, go to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you refinance your home and not have to make any payments till February 2024. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. And right now, Megan, they will even cover the cost of your appraisal. That's a $650 value. Go to trustedamerican.com or scan the QR code right here on the screen to see how much money they can save you today. What questions you got for us?
All right. This one we talked a little bit about during intermission, but I did want your take on it. It was Robert way earlier in the chat. Camargo, can we talk about that goalie interference challenge? I think the Druin goalie interference call several games ago was way softer than the amount of contact there was between Gorgie and Thompson.
So I tweeted out that I liked the challenge. I said, I don't know if they're going to win, but I like the challenge. For the exact reason that you just listed, Megan. I felt like we had seen that call once in the Avs' favor, once against the Avs earlier this season, get called back for the same amount of contact in the blue paint. And what they had determined multiple times this season is that impedes the goaltender's ability to make a save. And I'm okay with that if you call it consistently. To me, this one felt the exact same. The call goes the other way. And that, to me, is what leads to not frustration that it counts. It doesn't make a difference to me. I'm not Alexander Georgiev. But it does bother me that we've seen a precedent set and then upheld. And tonight, I felt like we saw a different result.
I think what bothers me, too, is, and maybe there's some Avs-colored glasses on right now, compared to the Druin call, where there is the contact with the goaltender, I feel like there's 2 points of contact of Thompson to Georgiev's skate that I can pinpoint and see where it would be impossible for Georgiev to move backwards as a result of Thompson's skate being behind his. That's what makes it really blatant in my eyes, but I might be seeing things a little biased. And they got the winning result, so they're probably not going to think too much about the inconsistencies and how that's called. And it's frustrating, right? That we've seen some pretty weird things not go the Avs' way, not only in Ball Arena, but now it's traveling with them on the road.
So true. I'm going to grab one here. Can Wedgwood be a temporary starter until we're able to replace Georgiev? Megan, you mentioned it on the pod this afternoon that Scott Wedgwood has shown at different points in his career that he can play games in succession. Last year, I believe you said he played
12 or 13 in a row.
12, 13 in a row as a starter. So could he do it? Sure. But I do just want to remind folks, pump the brakes. Just a little bit. I think there's plenty of reasons to feel good about what Scott Wedgwood came in and did tonight. I think he immediately showed his worth in this trade and why the Avs made a move like this for Scott Wedgwood. The goaltender market is still expensive. The Avs are still in a desperate spot for a goaltender, and other teams are still very well aware of that. So I think he's giving you options to give him a couple more starts, to not have to go to Alexander Georgiev as regularly. But nothing has changed from this afternoon in terms of where the goalie market sits and how difficult it will be for the Avs to get a move made here, to bring in a goaltender that is a clear upgrade on Alexander Georgiev or Scott Wedgwood.
I'm just peeking at other goaltender contracts around the league, and it is, as I would have feared, coming in at 3.4 for Alexander Georgiev. He is among the cheapest options for a starting goaltender. Doesn't make it right, but because they've just taken on a little bit more of a cap hit in bringing on Wedgwood, even moving Georgiev out doesn't grant them much flexibility at that position. It's going to be, I think, a multi-layered deal if they do move forward with one. And that's why, to your point, I'm not writing off that they would consider it. I don't doubt that they've been considering it for a little while, since the start of the year. The opening 10 games, I think, is when this really was lost for Alexander Georgiev in terms of trust in the organization, because Justus Annunen was able to entertain being a starter goaltender, at least briefly. We know that the trust wasn't quite built there. So what I'm getting at is Georgiev usually gets a little bit better after he's had his net threatened. And so, Justus Annunen getting those 4 starts and winning helped to string together some incredibly important points in the standing. I could see Wedgwood doing something similarly here and getting some consistent starts. And the Georgiev you get back on the other side probably can help you get a couple wins too, to buy them some time. I don't know how much time they have, but I don't think this can be the conclusion of what they want to do with the goaltending position. But I think it's going to require more than just some kind of 1v1 swap. And I think that's also going to require the Avs getting a clearer picture on their health. And so they're waiting on a couple things to come into play before they can really evaluate and execute anything on the goaltending position, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I agree with you. We got another super chat here, Megan. Well, now we have 2 disco lights and 2 super chat lights we owe back on the pod. Maybe we'll just have to have Mark hook them up over here. From Ryan B, $5. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm kind of blown away by the Georgiev story. Can either of you think of another goalie with this long of a leash? They've gambled 2 seasons now. So I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I will make the pretty firm argument that going into last season, it did not feel like a gamble. In fact, Alexander Georgiev
had a great first year here.
He had a great first year here. That actually felt like, the Avs may have actually found another kind of discount guy. Then the inconsistency started, and the up and down, and the roller coaster started last year. This was the first year that going into the season, it really felt like, oh, is this what you want to do going into it? And I think so much of what you just laid out is spot on. And it also goes back to what you said earlier today on the pod of, this is kind of the way the Avs have built their net. You're pretty strapped because you went out of your way to do what you did when you won a Stanley Cup and build it a little bit cheaper and spend that money somewhere else. So I do agree that it feels like he's got a really long leash. There's part of it that just feels like the Avs looked around in their mudroom and were like, damn, all we have is this crazy long leash. I guess we got to give it to him. You know what I mean? And maybe they're trying to find another option. Maybe they're trying to find a shorter leash. But I think for right now, the reason that Alexander Georgiev has continued to get this much leeway, that's really kind of their only option.
I can't remember in the chat, someone just said it, like, you shouldn't need tricks to get the best out of your goalie, and they're 100% right. And this is where I feel a little bit defensive of Jared Bednar. Like, Jared Bednar, get behind me, because he has had to come in front of media and say, Georgiev's our starter, because they don't have other options right now, but they do need to win games. Mm-hmm. They need to accrue points for the bigger playoff picture. And so right now they're handcuffed to Georgiev. So if that means parading Jared Bednar in front of media and saying, Gorgie's our starter, we're fully behind him, then he's going to have to do that. It's their best option to try and string together wins right now. And they're still trying to come up with other ways and backup plans to the Georgiev conversation with a Wedgwood, bringing in some stability. So it's not that alone, but that's where I feel a little bad for Jared Bednar. I don't know that he's saying that with his full chest and believing every word of it, but he has to say that.
Well, and that's the other part of it too. He has to say it. He has to say it. Let's go one more question each, and then we'll jump out for the day. I'm going to pull one here that I hope what I'm about to say isn't a mean answer. This is from our girl, Katie. Which realistic line mates can help Middlestat break out of his funk? This is on Casey Middlestat right now, Megan. He has skated with Mikko Rantanen in the last week, Val Nichushkin today, Arturi Lehkonen at points. Jared Bednar has put him out there with Nathan MacKinnon. He's playing with Power Play 1. Casey Middlestat needs to go dig his way out of this. Do you feel the same, or do you feel like he has had a rotating cast of line mates? No doubt about it. Casey's got to get Casey going here.
Absolutely. We've seen Casey find success with Lehkonen in the past, in particular last year, so we know that is a formula that could work. But similarly, he's played with Kovalenko probably a little more than some other players that have been in that revolving cast of line mates. So I don't mind seeing him continue to play with Kovalenko so long as it doesn't come at the expense of Kovalenko. I think in a game like this where they are desperate to get some goals, they couldn't afford to keep that together and allow Casey to just continue figuring it out in this game. But I do see them going back to some combination of Kovalenko, Casey, Val Nichushkin, because there isn't any reason right now it shouldn't work. I do think it comes down to Casey sorting through it, and I think that he needs a little bit more runway and time to do it in a game, and tonight just wasn't the one. They couldn't afford it.
I'm with you. Before you get to your question, we got another super chat here. This one from Miss Truly, longtime listener. Miss Truly, it's great to see you both. I'm loving it. The Forgiev roller coaster must stop. I'm getting queasy on it.
No.
Cheers. Miss Truly, great to see you. We now owe you a super chat light party on Friday. We're getting backed up here. But Megan, she is right. Whether they trade him or not, the roller coaster has to stop, whether that's him stopping it or the Avs making a move and getting him out of town to stop the roller coaster. You just can't keep doing the ups and downs.
No, it has a toll on the team in front of him, and the morale and the confidence. And it shouldn't. I agree, but it does. I know that he was going to be UFA at the end of this year, but I think that this year is punctuated. They need to resolve this much sooner than the summer. They need a different answer. I don't know. I feel bad even saying it because I think that there's a part of me holding out hope for Georgiev. No, I think I was, though, at one point holding out hope for Georgiev to be a little better than he was in terms of consistency. I'm like, well, he can play good games. We know that much. Can he do that a little more often than we've seen this year? But at this point, the highs and lows, the roller coaster, that's too risky. They can't play a 7-game series and make it to a Stanley Cup final with that kind of unreliability.
Not knowing what you're going to get. Friday pod is just going to be an hour-long disco party. That's what it's shaping up for right now. And if the Avs put together another game like this one against Carolina, it will have to be. Megan, what question do you got for us to help round out the day?
I was going to ask you the Middlestat one, too.
Oh, Katie. Dang. Okay, dang it.
So I think right now we're sitting at a ton of Georgiev questions.
So I've got one here that was in the chat that I think you and I will have a pretty aligned answer on.
Cool.
If you want me to go to this one instead.
Yes.
Are we going to talk about Bednar's future? I've been pretty adamant about this, even today on the pod. His future is with the Avs. I actually just said on a show last week that for me, Jared Bednar is the MVP of the first quarter of the season for this Avalanche team. There's been so much uncertainty, so much instability in the roster, rotating cast of players, goaltending problems, and to me, Jared Bednar has navigated those in a way that is now has his team 2 games over 500. When they probably don't have much business being.
He's coaching his ass off right now. From that 48-point season to now, I think that he's had some pretty good teams handed to him. And that's not to take away from what he's done as a coach, but this has been one of the most incomplete rosters any coach could be handed. Mm-hmm. And to be above 500 with such a depleted lineup, I think is a huge accomplishment. And there's ups and downs with morale issues that, you need somebody trying to steady that ship. And I think period by period, the Avs got better in this game after a disaster of a first. I remember Zach Parise said that Jared Bednar provides them a roadmap to win. It's up to them to actually execute. And I still have faith that he is such a detail-oriented coach, providing his players with so much information. Maybe for some of the new guys, it was too much information at times, because there's so much newness to this roster this year that it wasn't just preparing teams for the team ahead of them. It was also preparing his players just to play alongside each other newly. And so, there's the pre-scout, here's what to expect from Buffalo, but also here's what you should be doing with each other just generally, because you're going to be on a line with this guy tonight. And I think that was a lot of adjustment for him as a coach to navigate as well. I think he's handled it really well. And I think the result tonight, when you ask yourself, has he lost the room? That was a team that rallied. And again, it came down to them executing too. There was so much compete that the players themselves needed to have. But I think Jared Bednar is also a part of that conversation.
I completely agree with you. I think you've hit so many good points tonight.
Monty, I think that's an interesting point.
I 100% agree with that. If the Avs fired Jared Bednar tomorrow, there would be 5 teams that would be like, do we fire him and just bring that guy in? You don't fire a coach like Jared Bednar. He would get scooped up immediately.
A special coach to have forged a relationship and form of communication with Nathan MacKinnon, a unique player.
Yeah.
He's a special coach.
He's a special coach. Megan, I think that's going to do it. Do you have any final thoughts on has to be the most feel-good game of the season so far for the Avs?
Just that Jared Bednar also isn't the front office and doesn't get to make front office decisions. He can weigh in on them and have an opinion, but Georgiev being the answer in net right now is not because Jared Bednar said so. And I just felt like I needed to clarify that.
He's got to play the players that he's given, right? My kind of wrapping up thoughts for tonight. We said that we wanted to see this be a get-right game for the Avalanche. I'm going to stop shy of saying that it was that. But this was a game that they needed. They needed the 2 points. You couldn't stand to fall further out of playoff contention, Megan. You put yourself right back into it, right back in the wild card mix there, and you're not falling too far out with just what would have been a bad performance that it wouldn't even have just been, we lost. We lost some ground. You would have felt bad about the way that you lost this game. For this team to be able to climb back in, find a way to win, I think it's just spectacular for them. And I think this can go a long way in the locker room. We also mentioned today that we wanted to see them string together a few good games to get just things going back in the right direction. If they handle it right and they can find a way to build on it, this can be a game like that.
Doesn't get easier. They're going to Carolina next. A great team. They cannot afford to get away with what they got away with tonight. It was a great effort to come back from it, but they can't let a team like Carolina get into a game the way that they let Buffalo in the first period. So there has to be a lot of learning lessons to take from this one and carry into the next.
You're 100% right. Cale Makar told us last week that they have to be better about recognizing when they don't have their game and flipping that switch quicker. Thought they did a little bit of that tonight. But like you said, you can't wait till you fall behind against Carolina Hurricanes because you will not be able to climb back into that one. That's going to do it, guys. What a night. What a game. We'll be right back at it with this exact same setup on Thursday as the Avs are facing off against the Carolina Hurricanes. So we'll be back. Intermissions, post-game. We had a ton of fun tonight. It was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster, but we had a ton of fun. So thanks so much for tuning in. Massive shout out to John, by the way. Everything that you guys are seeing pulled together here, John makes it all happen. Mark was in here earlier helping out as well. So big shout out to him. He makes everything in the studio happen. That's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. This has been Guerilla Sports Off Ice post-game live edition. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. And we will talk to you later, right back at it on Thursday.